Welcome back to Truth Movement Cartel. Okay, guys, for those of you that have followed me over the years, you guys know I make a much attention to the fact that the dollar is just waiting to be rug pulled. It has been dead since June 9th, 2024. And why do I say that? Well, those of you that have followed me, I showed you when Saudi Arabia didn't re-sign the petrodollar agreement, June 9th, 2024, that officially was the stop clock for the end of the dollar. Now, we have watched the criminal-in-chief Trump basically just liquidating the dollar at every single option and opportunity that he can, right? Which is causing hyperinflation. That's all part of the game, and it was basically just get rid of it, right? Well, over the last few days, the alarm bells have been ringing because they've officially announced that Saudi Arabia will no longer be taking the petrodollar and will be taking the yuan, okay? The Chinese yuan, aka BRICS. And they made that global announcement that them and UAE will be taking oil payments in the yuan. You guys that don't understand the petrodollar agreement and how Saudi Arabia has basically kept us thriving for so long because everybody had to keep American dollars to buy oil or else they would not be able to buy oil. And that is all dead and gone. And guys, the stop clock is running. So I put together a little video here. Enjoy.
When I talk to my conservative friends right here, they always tell me that the problem is high taxes, but they're wrong. Of course, high taxes are extremely high here in the United States. I give you that. You're right in that. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact that they are not even really funding the government. Not even those high taxes, higher than a lot of places in the world, not even those taxes are really funding the government. So who's financing the government? Government is financed by treasury bonds, paper. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. What backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, you finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Someone could ask, well, so if the government can print unlimited amounts of money out of thin air, why do they collect taxes? I mean, in theory, it would make sense, right? If they can print unlimited amounts of money, why would they need taxes for? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. It's shocking, but it's true. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble that will inevitably burst. The situation is even worse than it seems, because if most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this farce, confidence in your currency would be lost, the dollar would fall, and the Western civilization with it.
As of June 9, 2024, Saudi Arabia has officially withdrawn from the decades-long petrodollar agreement. This marks a significant shift in global economics. The decision follows Saudi Arabia's refusal to renew a crucial U.S.-Saudi security agreement set to expire today under the leadership of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This move grants Saudi Arabia the freedom to sell oil and other commodities and currencies beyond the U.S. dollar, such as the RMB, euros, yen, and yuan. This decision challenges the dominance of the petrodollar system, which has been in place since the U.S. abandoned the gold standard in 1972.
Saudi Arabia just did something the United States spent decades trying to prevent. It sold oil in yuan, Chinese yuan. For over 50 years, the system was simple. If the world wanted oil, it needed dollars. That deal turned the dollar into the center of global trade, and Washington into the financial gatekeeper of the planet. But now, Saudi Arabia is quietly adjusting the rules. Riyadh has started accepting Chinese yuan for part of its oil exports to China. This does not kill the dollar overnight. Financial empires rarely collapse with dramatic music in the background. But it does send a signal, because the more the United States uses the dollar as geopolitical leverage, the more countries start looking for alternatives. And Beijing understands that perfectly. China is not just buying energy, it is building influence. Meanwhile, other nations are watching Saudi Arabia very closely, because once the world's largest oil exporter starts diversifying, others tend to notice, and reserve currencies usually decline the same way. First, they lose exclusivity, then confidence.
Explaining the petrodollar.
Energy future.
China is the only country that buys oil in their own currency. Not because it is allowed, but because power writes its own rules. When Modi tries the same, he is constantly threatened by Trump. After World War II, the United States emerged as the global superpower. And in collaboration with Saudi Arabia, Nixon announced all oil around the world was going to be bought using American dollars, meaning pounds, euros, rupees, rubles, yuan, all worthless. No dollars equals no oil for you.
So as you have just seen, the dollar is dead. And with this week's announcement that they are solely taking the BRICS currency, the yuan, as payment for oil, people, you need to understand this is what all the distraction and all the deference is all about. Pay attention. Pay attention. This is part 1. Part 2 tomorrow. Keep moving, cartel.